My brother's toast sounded like a farewell, but I knew it was really a curtain call. We were crammed around the oak table in Dad's dining room, the one that still smelled like lemon oil and birthdays. Balloons bumped the ceiling. A cheap banner sagged above the doorway. Dad wore that navy sweater Mom used to fix with tiny stitches, and his eyes had the watery shine they get when he's overwhelmed. 69 candles in a single ring, his breath waiting on the count of 3. Evan cleared his throat and tapped his glass. "I've got some news," he said, and everybody turned toward him like a flock. He stood straight, jaw steady the way it gets when he wants to look responsible. "I'm moving. New job. Better salary. New city." Aunt May clapped. My cousins whistled. Dad forced a smile, the kind that only lifts one side. I watched his hands, the way his right thumb rubbed the knuckle of his left. That's what he does when he's holding something in. "Congratulations," I said, and my voice came out calm. I cut a neat square of cake, slid it onto Dad's plate, and waited for the part Evan wasn't saying yet. He moved on, quick. "It's all happening fast," he added, eyes skimming the table. "Just a few weeks." I figured, well, tonight's as good a time as any to tell you. Mom's old friend, Lena, reached for Dad's shoulder. "You'll be so proud, Henry." Dad nodded, but I saw him swallow. The kitchen clock clicked over. Somewhere in the back of the house a pipe ticked as it cooled. It should have been a night for easy laughter, for telling the same stories we always tell. But even before Evan spoke, the air had shifted. It was a room waiting to hear how it would be emptied. I thought about the last year. Evan moving into the role he called point person, taking Dad to appointments, handling the mail, telling me he had it covered because my hours at the clinic were crazy and I lived across town. He took the house key off the ceramic dish by the door and called it efficiency. "Dad," Evan said softly, "I know change is hard." I set the knife down and folded my hands. "What else, Ev?" He flashed me the look he used when we were kids and I'd caught him sneaking the last popsicle, annoyed, daring. "Nothing else. It's just a big move." But the silence felt like a held breath. And Dad's eyes kept slipping to the living room, to the framed photo of him and Mom at the lakeside, her scarf flying, his arm around her waist. That photo had never left the mantel. Neither had he. Aunt May laughed at something she texted to the cousins, and paper plates crackled. I took Dad's fork and cut the first bite for him because sometimes he forgets to begin. He mouthed a thank you, and when he looked up at me, I saw the flicker of fear I hadn't seen since Mom's last night. After presents, Evan followed me into the kitchen to help with dishes. He didn't wash. He leaned on the counter like a foreman. "Don't start," he said quietly. "Tonight is for Dad." "Then say it to his face," I replied. "Say what moving means. Say what happens to him when you go." Evan's jaw set. "We'll handle it. I've been researching. There are options." The word options slid into the room like cold. I understood now, a facility brochure hidden under bills, a realtor's card stuck to the fridge with a magnet shaped like a lemon. "You've made plans without him," I said. "It's responsible," he said. "You know he can't keep up with a whole house. You know you've been, frankly, absent." I let the insult pass through me. 2 shifts a day, 3 nights on call. Absent had paid for an MRI when insurance hesitated. Absent had done the bathrooms, scrubbed the mildew, labeled the pill case when I got here before sunrise. Behind Evan, Dad appeared in the doorway, leaning on the frame. His sweater made him look smaller. "Kids," he said, voice thin, "don't quarrel at my party." "We're not," Evan said quickly, warmth turned on like a switch. "We're just excited. Big changes." Dad nodded, and his eyes went to me again, asking a question he couldn't name. I wiped my hands on a towel and smiled at him. "We'll cut more cake," I said. When Dad shuffled back to the living room, Evan lowered his voice. "I'm leaving in 3 weeks. I'll get the house listed right after. The market's good. We can move Dad before then. There's a beautiful place with a garden." The towel was damp in my fists. "Listed?" I repeated, and he must have heard the edge in my voice. "Don't be dramatic," he said. "I'll send you the spreadsheets." He walked out to refill drinks, the hero of his own errand. I stood at the sink with the faucet hissing and the window black as a mirror. My reflection looked steady. My chest felt like a fist. I had promised myself I wouldn't do it tonight, not on Dad's birthday, not in front of the cousins or the woman from church or anyone who might turn our family into a story they'd retell in their kitchens. But Evan had just set the match near the fuse. I dried my hands slowly. The drawer beside the stove held more than cutlery. It held the envelope I'd placed there weeks ago, after a long morning at the county office, after standing in a hallway smelling faintly of old paper and coffee. My name was on the document, and Dad's, and the date. It wasn't a threat. It was a promise I'd made to protect the ground under his feet. Evan's voice rose in a joke in the next room. People laughed. Dad coughed lightly and settled into his chair. I slid open the drawer and touched the envelope, just once, like testing the weight of a future. I closed it again, and when I turned, Evan stood in the doorway with 2 glasses, his smile thin as wire. "Ready to be reasonable?" he asked. "More than you think," I said, and the word reasonable began to mean something very different in my head. The candles had been blown out. But something else was about to be lit. I didn't sleep at my apartment that night. I sat up on Dad's sofa like I used to after Mom's chemo days, shoes by the door, phone face down. The house made its old sounds, pipes ticking, the fridge's soft shudder, the wind tapping the maple against the eaves. I could feel the stubborn heartbeat of the place. Dad snored once, a single rough note, then settled. In the gray of morning, I brewed coffee and started a quiet patrol. Mail in neat stacks. Pill case filled to Saturday. Dishes rinsed. Evan had systems now, color-coded tabs on a clipboard, a magnet board with appointments like a project plan. He'd done some things well. He'd also moved Dad's toolbox to the garage rafters, too high. He'd hidden a spare key in a fake rock shaped like a potato. He'd labeled Dad's bedroom door, primary, like this was a hotel. I brought Dad oatmeal and sat on the edge of his bed while he ate slowly. "How do you feel about Evan's big move?" I asked. He took his time. "He's my boy," he said. "He has to fly." "And you?" He glanced at the window. Morning light made the curtains look thin. "Your mother hated these drapes," he murmured. "Said they made the room sad." "Dad," I said gently, "do you want to stay here?" He looked back at me, alert for once. "This is where your mother sang in the kitchen," he said. "Where you took your first steps and landed on your rear and laughed at me." "Yes. I want to stay." It was the kind of answer that leaves no air for options. But options had a way of forcing themselves in. At 10, Evan arrived with a brisk knock that was more announcement than courtesy. He had printouts rolled into a tube and a smile arranged like furniture. "Family Summit," he said, breezing past me. "Dad, good morning." He set the papers on the dining table. Floor plans. Bullet points. Costs in tidy columns. "The garden at Maple Ridge," he said, tapping a glossy brochure. "Light-filled spaces, a walking path, on-site nursing. There's a wait list, but I've got a contact." Dad peered at a photo of a man his age playing checkers with a volunteer. "Do they let you plant tomatoes?" he asked. "They have activities," Evan said. Tomatoes are messy. I felt the heat rise in my chest. He asked about tomatoes, I said. Evan's eyes flicked to me. We can't build a plan on nostalgia. It's his life, I said, and I kept my voice level. Not a plan. He turned a page. Also, the house. Older wiring, single pane in the back bedrooms, roof in 3 to 5 years. We could sell while demand is high. Split proceeds, get Dad settled without stress. There it was, the word split, casual as a napkin. I watched Dad's face. He looked small over a sea of paper. I can help with repairs, I said. We don't have to sell anything. Evan exhaled, a quick, impatient gust. You're never here. Your hours are chaos. I've been the one doing the hard parts. I didn't list my hard parts. Night meds, bath mats, paying the property tax when Evan said he'd get to it, talking the insurance rep down from a denial. I just said, say the real reason. He bristled. The real reason is safety. Liability. Logistics. The words clinked like cutlery in an empty sink. Dad rubbed his thumb over his knuckle. Boys, he said, out of habit, then corrected himself, kids. I like my chair. I like my tomatoes. Evan softened. We'll bring the chair, he said. We'll visit every weekend. I pictured Dad's chair in a bright, echoing room, its familiar indent pointing toward a TV he didn't choose. I also pictured another thing, the envelope in the kitchen drawer, heavy with a decision I'd made when I realized Evan was rewriting the story in the margins. After lunch, I walked Evan to his car. He opened the trunk to reveal 2 storage tubs. I'll start clearing the basement, he said. Just getting ahead. You already called a realtor, I said. He didn't answer. He didn't have to. He pulled away with a cheerful wave. I stood in the driveway, the cold biting through my socks because I'd forgotten shoes. The maple tree trembled like it was trying to speak. Back inside, I checked Dad's meds, then returned to the kitchen. I opened the drawer and slid out the envelope. My name and Dad's name, the date, the clerk's stamp. I pressed it flat on the counter and steadied my breath. Before I could break the seal, my phone buzzed. A new voicemail from an unknown number. The preview text showed one line, "This is regarding your father's deed." The voicemail lasted 41 seconds, but it changed everything. This is Margaret from the county records office, the voice said. We received a recent transfer inquiry involving Mr. Henry Lowell's property. Before we process anything, we need written consent from all listed owners. Please return our call. I played it twice, then a third time, my thumb trembling over the screen. Transfer inquiry. Not listing, not estimate, transfer. Someone had already started paperwork to move Dad's house into another name. I checked the kitchen clock. 10:47. The county office would still be open. I slipped the envelope into my bag and kissed Dad's head. Quick errand, I said. The office sat behind the library, a low brick building that smelled like toner and dust. A woman in a plum cardigan greeted me at the counter. Her name tag read Margaret. I gave her my ID and the property address. She typed for a while, humming under her breath. Then her face changed, just slightly. She murmured, so you're Miss Lowell. Yes. Is there a problem? She hesitated. A quitclaim deed was filed last week. Transfer of ownership from Henry Lowell to, she scrolled, Evan Lowell, as sole owner. But it's incomplete. It's on hold pending co-owner consent. That's you. The words fell into me like stones. Filed. With my father's signature. Yes, she said carefully. It appears notarized. Do you want a copy? I nodded. When she printed it, the paper came out warm, like it had a pulse. Dad's signature wobbled at the bottom, familiar but weak, like the way his hand shakes before his morning pills. Evan's signature sat below it, bold and steady. The notary stamp belonged to someone in Evan's company building. He hadn't just planned to sell the house, he'd already claimed it. "Can I get the notary's information?" I asked. Margaret lowered her voice. "Technically, it's public record, but I'd be careful. You might want legal help." I thanked her, folded the copy, and walked out into the thin autumn light. The envelope in my bag suddenly felt like armor. On the way home, I called the only person I trusted for quiet advice, my mother's old friend, Lena. She'd worked as a paralegal for decades, the kind of woman who never forgot a date or a debt. "Bring me the papers," she said immediately. "And don't tell your brother, you know." At her kitchen table, I laid out the deed and the original document I'd filed, a joint ownership preservation affidavit, giving me partial rights to Dad's property in case of any mental decline. It wasn't power of attorney, but it was enough to freeze any sale without my consent. Lena pushed her glasses up. "Smart girl," she said. "You filed this before?" "2 months ago," I said. "When I saw Evan talking to a realtor in the driveway." She nodded slowly. "He probably thought your father's signature would override it." "It doesn't. This gives you standing." Her cat jumped onto the table and sat right on the papers, like it was guarding them. Lena poured me tea. "You have 2 paths," she said. "You can warn your father, which will break his heart. Or you can wait for Evan to move again, and stop him with this." Quietly. I looked at the faded picture on Lena's fridge, Mom, years ago, smiling in the garden. "He's moving in 3 weeks," I said. "He'll push the sale before that." "Then you need proof," Lena said. "Not just the deed. Something that shows intent." She slid a small recorder across the table. "Use it when you talk to him. Keep your voice calm. Let him fill the silence." I tucked the recorder into my bag. "Thank you," I said. Back home, Dad was asleep in his chair, the TV showing an old fishing show. His hand rested on his chest, steady, peaceful. I brushed crumbs off his sweater and kissed his temple. I hated that I was about to turn his sons into adversaries. That night, Evan called. "Hey," he said brightly. "Just checking on Dad." "He's fine," I said. "You? Busy?" "I sent you some updated spreadsheets. I'll swing by tomorrow, go over logistics." "Sure," I said, keeping my tone easy. "See you then." He paused, sensing something. "You sound different." "Just tired," I said, and hung up before the truth leaked through. The house fell quiet again. I slipped the recorder onto the counter beside the fruit bowl. Tomorrow, I'd have what Lena called the missing piece. When I turned off the light, a thought flickered through me, sharp, certain, and cold. Evan didn't know it yet, but his perfect plan had just met its deadline. Evan showed up the next morning wearing his work blazer, though it was Saturday. His car door slammed with confidence. He carried a folder tucked under his arm like a trophy. "Morning," he said, stepping inside before I could even answer. His cologne filled the hallway, expensive, efficient. "Is Dad up?" "In the garden," I said. "He's watering the tomatoes." Evan sighed, glancing toward the backyard. "Those plants should have been pulled weeks ago. Season's done." "He doesn't care about seasons," I said. "He cares about growing something." Evan didn't answer. He laid his folder on the dining table and flipped it open. "All right, I've updated the numbers. If we list now, conservatively, we're looking at 350, maybe more." I've got a contact ready to start preliminary photos next week. I took a breath, pressed record on the small device I'd hidden behind the fruit bowl. You already have a buyer. Potentially. He smiled. A couple from Denver. They loved the listing. What listing? I asked softly. He froze. Don't start semantics. No, really, I said. I haven't signed anything. Neither has Dad. His eyes hardened. You don't have to make this difficult. The paperwork's already underway. I have power of attorney now. That stopped my breath. You forged it, didn't you? His voice lowered, annoyed. Don't throw accusations. Dad agreed. Did he? Or did you put a pen in his hand after he took his medication? His jaw twitched. You're being dramatic again. Tell me about the quitclaim deed, I said. The one you filed last week. Evan's eyes flicked, just slightly, then he laughed. Who told you that? The county did. Margaret, from records. He rubbed his face. You had no right. I had every right, I said, cutting through his sentence like glass. Dad's name is still on that title. So is mine. You can't transfer a house that isn't yours. For the first time in months, he didn't have a ready reply. His shoulders shifted, his calm cracking. You went behind his back, I said quietly. Behind mine. You took advantage of a man who still calls the remote the clicker. Evan leaned forward, voice sharp. You don't understand. You've been too busy playing Florence Nightingale to notice how bad he's getting. He needs supervision, not sentimentality. Then why not say that? I asked. Why not tell me instead of filing deeds in secret? He stared at me for a long moment. Because you'd stop me. And this is the right thing, whether you believe it or not. I reached into the drawer and pulled out the thick envelope, placing it between us. No, this is the right thing. Filed 2 months before your deed. Joint ownership preservation. Nothing changes without both signatures. Evan's eyes widened. You, what? Lena helped me. I filed it when you started taking Dad's mail. You thought I wouldn't notice. He flipped through the pages, his face draining color. You can't, this doesn't. It does, I said. It gives me legal standing. You try to sell this house, it gets blocked automatically. The silence stretched, long and thin. From outside, we could hear Dad humming, the sound of water on soil. Evan finally exhaled, shaking his head. You'd rather keep him here until he falls down the stairs. I'd rather keep him where he feels like himself, I said. He shut the folder with a snap. You always loved drama. Maybe, I said. But I also love the truth. He stood up, grabbing his keys. Fine. You want this? You take care of him alone. Don't call me when it gets too hard. I didn't move. I won't have to. He stopped at the door, shoulders tense. You think you won? This isn't over. I looked past him toward the window, where Dad stood with the watering can, waving at a robin on the fence. No, I said softly. It's just beginning. Evan slammed the door behind him, tires crunching on the gravel. The air in the house felt lighter but colder too, like the moment right after thunder. I turned off the recorder. Proof, just as Lena had said. When Dad came in, his sleeves wet from the hose, he looked at me curiously. Did your brother have to go already? Yes, I said. He had some things to take care of. Dad nodded slowly, easing into his chair. You two will figure it out. You always do. I smiled faintly. We will. That night, I sat with Lena's cat purring on my lap, listening to the playback. Evan's voice, calm then sharp, admitting enough to make his intent clear. I labeled the file, saved copies to 2 drives, and placed one in the same drawer where the envelope had rested. By morning, I knew exactly how to finish this. Quietly. Permanently. And at Dad's next birthday, it would be my turn to make an announcement. 2 weeks later, the house smelled like apple pie and lemon polish again. Dad was humming in the kitchen, sleeves rolled up, working at his own rhythm. His tomatoes, what was left of them, sat in a small basket on the counter, green and wrinkled but proud. Evan hadn't come back since that morning. A few texts had arrived, short, defensive, full of half-threats wrapped as logic. I didn't answer any of them. Instead, I focused on what mattered: Dad's mornings, his meds, his laughter when the kettle whistled too loud. I'd filed the recorder and the deed copies with Lena, who'd smiled with that mix of pride and exhaustion older people use when they've seen enough family battles. "You've done what's right," she said. "Now make peace with what's left." And I had tried. Still, when Dad's birthday came around again, I felt the same knot in my stomach as the year before. The same cake, the same banner, the same chair at the head of the table. But this time, I'd invited only a few close friends, no cousins, no noise, just warmth. The afternoon light slanted through the curtains, soft and golden. Dad sat in his chair, smiling at the flicker of 69 candles again. "Make a wish," I said. He chuckled. "I've already got everything I need." That was when the doorbell rang. I opened it to find Evan standing there, suit slightly wrinkled, eyes hollow. He looked smaller than I remembered, like something inside him had folded. "Can I come in?" he asked. I hesitated, then stepped aside. "Dad's in the kitchen." He nodded, taking a deep breath before walking toward the sound of the kettle. When Dad saw him, his face softened instantly. "Evan. You made it." Evan's voice wavered. "Wouldn't miss it, Dad." They hugged, awkward but genuine. I poured coffee for all 3 of us and set it on the table. For a while, the only sound was the clinking of spoons. Finally, Evan looked up. "I withdrew the sale request," he said quietly. "And the transfer papers. You'll get a notice from the county. It's over." Dad looked between us, puzzled. "What sale?" I smiled gently. "Just paperwork stuff, Dad. Nothing for you to worry about." Evan sighed. "I'm sorry," he said. "I thought I was fixing things. I didn't want to watch you struggle, or her burn out. I just went about it wrong." Dad reached over and covered his hand. "Families don't need fixing, son. Just tending." Something eased in the room then, like a window opening. I saw a flicker of the boy Evan used to be, the one who built forts with me in the living room using couch cushions and Mom's old scarves. After dessert, Evan left quietly, but not bitterly. "Take care of him," he said before getting in his car. "I always will," I said. He nodded once and drove away, his taillights fading down the old gravel road. When the house grew still again, I stood by the window, watching Dad doze in his chair. The afternoon breeze swayed the curtains, carrying the faint scent of tomatoes and candle wax. I went to the garden and picked one last ripe tomato, the final one of the season. Its skin was thin and warm from the sun. I held it in my palm for a moment, then placed it on the table beside Dad. He stirred, smiling without opening his eyes. "For me." "For us," I said. He nodded, drifting back into sleep. I sat beside him, breathing in the quiet. The house was still ours. The soil beneath it, still his. And though the fight had bruised something inside me, it had also rooted something stronger, proof that love isn't loud, it's persistent. Sometimes revenge doesn't roar. It whispers, not this time. I took out the recorder and deleted the file, one click, clean and final. Justice had already been served in silence. The evening sun painted the living room in gold, and for the first time in a long while, peace didn't feel like a luxury, it felt like a right. If this story touched you, share your thoughts below. And subscribe for more stories of quiet revenge.